Yo, what's up, legends? Welcome back to another video on the channel. It's been a little while, but it's summer right now. It's peak festival season, so it's a little bit busy right now, but I hope you guys understand. I asked you what you wanted to see, and the Patreon squad in the Discord said they wanted to see the Old School walkthrough. The Old School is my first release on the New Look Rave Room Recordings, my own label, in association with Revealed. My first release on the label needed to be huge. So I really think this was a great track to use. It already got quite a lot of support from W&W, etc. Playing the big room version, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I think it was a great track to kick off the start of the label. Before we get into that, I'm announcing a new song today, Rave Culture. It is called After Party. I think it's already been announced by the time you see this video. It's pretty cool, kind of old hard techno kind of vibe. In addition to that, we also have a new project file on Rave ready. Now, this one is sick. This one is really special. I asked you guys what you wanted to see with the project files. A lot of you guys said, look, I want to see your sound. Make a project file with your sound. So I've created a project file with my kind of sound that you can download, you can chop up, you can finish, release it. Whatever you want to do with it, you can do. It sounds a little bit like this. So that is the project file. Probably my favorite one on Rave Ready. Go check that out. Thanks for supporting us as always over there. Let's jump into the track. If you haven't heard it already, it sounds a bit like this. Now I hope it sounds good because the leads are a little bit kind of temperamental, let's say. Like they decide to kind of go crazy and stop playing at times. It's a Nexus lead, the main one, so it's a little bit, yeah, you can't really trust Nexus sometimes, can you? But let's see how it goes.
Back to the old school.
See that extra note playing? It's because Nexus is freaking out. But that's how the track goes. It's a little bit inspired by Atom, the old electro house song. Was really big into that song back in the day, so that's where I thought, like, let's take that but add another layer on top of it, like to just take the energy next level, but also give a little bit of like a nostalgic feeling. Where do we begin? Well, let's start with the leads then I can turn those little effers off. The sample pack for patrons will be this. The Patreon sample pack will be Old School at the end of the month, so stay tuned for that one. Let's take a look at the leads. There's a lot of stuff, and I know I'm trying to be a little bit more organized nowadays with my tracks, so that when I show you guys the project files, it's going to be a little bit easier to digest, because I know this is crazy to look at. But I have changed my ways. I am working on it. As we see, there's just some reverb automation. But let's look at the actual leads themselves and the pattern. So what I've done is I think I've got everything in one. No, I don't actually. This is a bit deceiving. What I do have is the leads in one and the Atom style plugs in another. I'm just going to delete all the stuff that we don't actually need to see here. I think this one as well, right? So here we have the main leads. So that's the pattern, but it's a little bit boring, right? It's just a bit boring and repetitive, so that's why I did the pitching, but we'll check that in a second. Main sound is, I think it's RAVE preset, yeah, from Nexus 4. We also have some supporting layers. These are just there to make the sound feel a little bit bigger. So we've got like a thick big room kind of saw, and then we've got a serum layer as well, which is, drum roll, Unison for Days, which is again just like a simple big room saw. But without them, it does feel a bit empty. So that's why we get the big room power. If you're using still big room leads, try and find some old big room leads as support. So find like a really unique sound like that, like a ravey synth, and then use the old big room sounds you would always use as the backup layers, as the support. They're all processed the same way. This was a lazy project. It's hard to understand this as well. I know it's a bit all over the place, but let's look at what we did processing wise. You know what? I'm not even going to say these top two because this never changes. So same kind of settings. I'll usually bring down the post gain a little bit more nowadays, just to get more of a clean distortion. I don't want it to be too messy. And the smart for build-up purposes, FabFilter Satin isn't on because I've got a little bit of a problem with that right now. But I was just boosting the mids and the highs using a clean tape. Then we have the isotope trash, my favorite, using the push-pull saturation. EQ, pretty important, cutting out all that low end that all these plugins just added to. We have S1 Imager, making it a little bit wider, and brightening EQ at the end just to lift up that highs a little bit. I just needed a little bit more. We loop it into this channel so these two are connected so I can add more stuff. The grow speed is quite important. So we have the you saw I wrote the notes out, but I actually wanted it to sound a little bit cooler and a little bit smoother, so I added a gate to it as well. So it's a little bit like the attack's less and it seems smoother, but we'll have a look at that. Reverb, here's the reverb settings, linked to a peak controller, parametric EQ to bring the overall gain down. I felt it was a bit loud. We have a delay on the sound as well, another EQ, just these little fine tuning, getting the sound to feel a bit more full. Then we have compression at the end and then sidechain. Sidechain isn't super heavy, but without any processing, they sound like this. So you can see there, they're super heavy now, but it was already a nice sound to begin with, so the work wasn't really that much for me to do. These pitches are really, really important, though. I will say that every single layer in that lead is linked to this pitch, so it will all do the same pitch together. That transforms the lead so much. If you're going to use a melody like this, like my sound nowadays is a lot of just one note drops. So I'm conscious of that. I want to make it as interesting as possible, and pitches is just an age-old trick that just brings so much life into a lead. I love that. Whoa, it's crazy, man. Yeah, that's nice. So we've got an Arts Acoustic reverb automation on the wet there. I think because the gap, I wanted to fill it with as much reverb as possible. So as I said before, it is linked to a peak controller, so the reverb is being controlled by the waveform. So when it feels a note is playing, it will reduce the reverb. When there's no note, it will fill that space. However, I want to exaggerate that to another level, so I also automated this knob to fill up that space even more and just give even more wet reverb in there. So that is the leads. A pretty big, important part of the drop, but I don't think it's the most important part of the drop. If we mute the other stuff, let's see how it sounds with just the leads and the drums and bass.
Back to the old school.
It sounds like a 12-year-old FL Studio novice track. However, we give the track so much personality with this. Now it's like 2012 mixed with 2023. I love this song. Really, it's a personal favorite of mine because it just reminds me of the good old days, you know, the Atom days. So let's look at those Atom plugs, which I know all you guys want to know. I didn't sample anything from Atom. It's just inspired by. So let's look one by one at the sounds that I did use. So let's turn that off, and turn that off. So the first one is this. Pattern's pretty simple. What I did with all these samples is just made sure they're quite short because I want them to be snappy. So that's the first sound. The next sound is this, which is more of a main sound. Next sound is this. Ugly as hell, but this works in the grand scheme of things. Then we have a Nexus layer as well. That has a really nice click, which I think would benefit the samples and make it sound less samply. Look at that little crunch that it gets. So that's those sounds. We also have another layer, I think, here, which is just like a... That's just more for the texture. This is just a really basic serum sound. But it's going to add a lot of texture and, again, make this sound less samply because you want this to sound like a VST. That's just adding a little bit of, like, crunch. And then we have this one, which I think is crucial. So altogether we have this. So with the lead, it's starting to take a bit more shape. Now, in this track, I didn't use a big room sub or any sample. I made my own sub bass, and it was really thick and full because I wanted the pattern to follow the sub. Because I want this to be heavy, but also have a good bit of rhythm. This is such a warm sub bass. I love this sub bass. It's a Nexus preset, which is called Nova, and I have boosted the sub frequency slightly, give it a little bit of attack to make it snappier, cut all the high and the mid frequencies I don't need, another boost to this low end, and then a sidechain, and that provided me such a thick sub bass.
Back to the old school.
See, this just gives the track a bit more depth. This extra kind of low bassy layer, as I said before, from Serum. If you're using samples for stuff, try and add VST layers to it because it's always going to sound a bit more natural and less sampley. So there we have the drop leads. We have the Atom style leads. Let's see what the Atom plugs sound like with no processing. So the focus here is really getting rid of all that low muddy sound, and I think we did that. Because as I said before, the sub bass is so big, it's covering all of the low end that we need in the song. So we just get rid of all of the low end from those plugs. Everything's got to work like jigsaw, right? Take away all the low end from this, but you need to fill up that low end with something else, and it just worked so well. It's beautiful to listen to. Kick, super clean kick. I love this one. Beautiful. Top kick. Another top kick. All together. The top kick does so much. Both of these guys have their own kind of use here. That's beautiful. Now, as I said before, this used to be a big room song. I made it, you know, an old school big room EP just for the fun of it. And as time went on, as I developed my sound, I realized I didn't want to be a part of that big room kind of sound anymore. It was putting me inside a box. But I love this song personally, and W&W played it so many times. It got quite a lot of hype, so I knew I needed to make it sound a little bit more current with my own style. But I didn't want to transform it completely and add a techno kick and stuff. So I kept all the elements, boosted the BPM a little bit so I could play it. So my set started like 135 BPM. And we also added some techno stuff. For example, here is a techno bass shot from my track with Hardwell, Seduction. So I think a lot of you guys are like, understand that being an Ollie James song. It's actually a different one. That's embarrassing. This is from my Miracle remix of Calvin Harris. But still, you're gonna recognize it because I've used it in another song. It's got the little reverse there, so the transition's smooth. We have more techno stuff. Love this bass shot, but it's quite subtle stuff. I didn't want to go fully make it a techno song. I just wanted it to have a little bit of kind of current to it, you know. So we have that bass shot, we have the acid shots there, and then I think the only other stuff that gets added is techno drums. Great hat, this one. Really, really nice. These are really punching through the mix. So now we have these hats instead of big room toms, and I think the energy is so much bigger here. You've got so much energy coming from those drums. We also have this. I think it's a clap fill. Yeah, this reminds me of like one of the samples Hardwell used in Introduction. He added this really cool like offbeat clap filtered out. It sounds crazy, so that's where I got the inspiration for that. We have some white noise. This kind of vocal downlifter, which is really cool, makes it sound a little bit techno as well. I removed those trance stabs, and then it did feel like quite a modern like big room song.
Back to the old school.
Sub bass disappeared.
Back to the old school. Back to the old school.
So breakdown wise, yeah, I was basically at a point where I knew this song was going to be the first Rave Room release. It was an empty track. You know, I made this as a big room 2015 kind of song, so it didn't have any vocal in it. It had no theme, nothing. So I was kind of at a point where I just had this bare bones track. It had no identity, no name or anything. So that's why I was looking for vocals, and when I heard this one, I was just set because this fits so well with the theme of the song. It's a 2012 inspired track. To have a vocal which says the old school is just perfect. So here's the vocal on its own.
Back to the old school. I was around to hear the music play.
Got a nice little reverse into that just to make the transition better.
We're going back to the old school. Back to the old school.
And you just basically just cut the first part of that vocal, run it through Edison, add a reverb, reverse it, drag it back in, and it makes such a smooth transition into the vocal. Apart from that, we have just an atmospheric breakdown, really. It's just a club track, right? This is not really built for the radio, Spotify even, but it's just built for the club, and this has enough tension. Got these atmospheric stuff here. Beautiful. Nice little texture on this. Bass roll, which just comes up slowly. A little bit of endless smile there to offset the filter. Just makes it, you know, vibey. And then we also have white noise, high string. A very techno, you know, tech house, whatever. It's a sound everyone knows. And we just build up the tension slowly from there.
We're going back to the old school.
Nice ravey synth, because again we want this to sound ravey, as that's kind of what my sound is. Same again here. Got the breakbeat again, and that again provides like a cool change in the energy. We're kind of building it up a little bit. So in terms of the build-up, it's pretty simple. We had this big room build-up before, but I added some extra snares, beef it up a bit. I wanted to keep the energy from the original big room version, just because it was great and it worked really well live. We also have some rises. Crazy tension there. And then we obviously have the pre-drop. That's it for break one. I don't think there's much you need to know there. It's so stripped back, but it does work because we have a vocal in there. The vocal's doing a lot of work for us.
We're going back to the old school. Way back in the...
Got the bass shots from the drop and also the vocal plays again. And then we go into kind of a longer build-up. And the difference between build-up, breakdown 1 and 2, this one just introduces the drop synth, and this is a big tension builder. You know, the pitch is rising. People know that the build-up's going to come. And then drop 2, I think it's pretty much the same. I don't think I even changed a single thing. Maybe some white noise added. Then we go into the outro, which is pretty similar to the intro. We just take the drop, bring out some elements. So that wraps up the old school walkthrough. Thank you so much for watching. As always, thank you for the support. Which one do you want to see next? Still haven't done my Calvin Harris remix walkthrough. Maybe we can go through that one. Please let me know. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.